Hey everybody, I wanted to take a look at some of the game's statistics today. Now, I was a bit inspired by Drewberry, who is a great content creator, one of my favorite Snap content creators on YouTube. Please go check him out. A little while ago, he looked at the top performing cards of the meta, and that got me to wondering what cards are surprisingly underperforming, what cards are regarded well, but the stats say otherwise. So I figured I'd take a look. The first things first, I'm sorting the cards on snap.fan, which is a great website. All right, now I've sorted this list starting with ranks 80 to 100. I feel like that's the most competitive ranks. Everybody is trying to run the best deck they have. There's very little experimentation. So that'll get like a good idea of what cards are performing well and what are not. I've also limited it to collection level 1000 to 3000. That's where most players at this point are. It's somewhere in pool 3. And I set it to deck pool 3, which is decks that are containing at best pool 3 cards. So this cuts out like the Shuris, the Darkhawks, the Galactuses. I think can skew the numbers a little bit. We see. Let's see what we learn. Most of the cards we all have a good sense of, right? Like we know Hazmat needs some help. There's like a niche thing with Luke Cage and whatever. Falcon and Beast, it's like the Bounce Bros deck. Some people try it and maybe get some results, but largely not so much. The first one that really stands out to me is Magic. Some people swear by this card. If you know Bootman, another great YouTube content creator for Snap, he swears by Magic. He talks about his Megantress deck all the time. But the stats across the spectrum are simply not good. Is really in the bottom tier of cards, cubes, win rate, every way. Now, personally, I've never played her. I never saw the reason to do it. When people play her against me, it almost feels good, right? Like, oh, good, I have more time to set up my combo to draw the cards I need. They took a weak turn. So, like, anecdotally, this makes sense to me, but I know a lot of people play her, a lot of people put her in decks and they think she's really potent card. So, from my own experience, it makes sense. There's some disagreement there. Next up, we have Mr. Negative. Now, I just made a video about my Mr. Negative deck, so maybe this is why I didn't get to Infinite, right? Also, a good example, this is why you need a script for YouTube videos, because in the video I made as I was wrapping up, I slip in, he's pretty consistent, which I had not written down. And honestly, it's just not a good way to describe Mr. Negative. Between not drawing him on 4 and then potentially not drawing cards that help the game situation, Negative is he really is a wild card. Interesting to note, his played win rate, average cubes, is actually still pretty good. Like, it puts him in the top, what does that look like? The top 40 or so? So you can win cubes with him, right? It's not, when things do pop together, you can win cubes, you can snap and win big cubes, you can win cubes in bunches. So I think maybe it's not unreasonable to climb with him, but it's a deck you have to play a lot with. You have to know when to retreat. You have to know how, to know the deck in and out. So I had good results with it, but maybe I was limiting myself. Going on from Mr. Negative, White Tiger was in my Mr. Negative deck. I actually never liked White Tiger in like Series 1 and 2 when a lot of people are playing her. I didn't like her back then. She was inconsistent and it felt expensive. I put her in because she seemed very strong with Negative, but maybe it's time to cut that. Now here is, I think, the first real surprise. We have Arnim Zola and Taskmaster. These two kind of come as a pair. They serve the same purpose, or they're in the same deck at least. They are in like the big boys, the 0, you put down Red Skull, you put down something really big, and you either copy those stats with Taskmaster or you play Zola to move those stats to different lanes, to 2 different lanes. So I know like Regis Kilpin just yesterday put out a video about the new top Infinite deck, and it has these cards in it. So what's going on here? I think that there's sort of a suffering. You can see both of them. Zola, 51% win rate when played with a point, at least a positive cube rate. Taskmaster, a somewhat of an improvement when played. So that speaks to this sort of inconsistency of draw. Like you need to draw your big guy and play it on 5, Red Skull or a Typhoid Mary or a Tuma I had in my version of this deck. And then you have to have Zola or Taskmaster, and then you also have to have a game state where that's enough to win. What I often run into was even if I got a Red Skull down, I had it zeroed out, so there's no downside. It just wouldn't be enough still, right? Like Brood, Silver Surfer, there's just ways to add big stats, or if you lock down a lane with Professor X, all of these types of things just make it so that it's just not quite enough. Mostly the big power, the Surfer, Sarah Surfer, Negative Surfer, Patriot Surfer type of lists, they just put down a lot of power. It's hard to compete with. Now, when Nidavellir was the hot location for 1 or 2 days, I ran a deck based around playing Venom on Nidavellir to get all that power bundled up in one Venom and then copying it, and that worked really well. So the key for these guys, the reason it's Regis Kilbin and the high-level players can succeed with them is that they have Shuri. Shuri doubles the power of any cards, and we can go see. Let's take some of these restrictions off, right? Let's let Shuri be in the pool. If we take the deck pool restriction off, we'll see that there's Shuri is here. And then what do we do when we look at win rates? We see Taskmaster is in the top 10. And we see that Zola a little further down, but still, as far as played win rate, is now in the top, does that look like 25? So once you add Shuri into the mix, these cards, that deck's potential is just escalated tremendously. But not everybody has access to that. And so for those of us who are still finishing off pool 3, there's just a limit. There's a ceiling is quite a bit lower. Just splitting those, let's get this sorted again. There was Ironheart, who is one of my favorite cards. I run her in my Negative Surfer deck, but you can see, just compare her to Silver Surfer, it's just not in the same league. And a lot of the decks nowadays, Sarah decks, Zabu decks, negative decks, they don't play a lot of stuff early. So Ironheart has to come down later in the game, and then by the time you're playing Ironheart, there's just better stuff to do nowadays. Next, I saw that had me a little sad is Iron Man right here. And that's just sad, right? This is one of the coolest cards in the game. This card can just have real big pop-offs. It can surprise your opponent. It can make a huge power increase in one lane. But as we can see here, when played, it has actually very good stats. So what does that show us? Well, if we go into the Iron Man, first of all, look at the Iron Man's variants. Like, I've never seen this variant. I've never seen this variant. There's so many here. But on top of that, synergies are with basically Mr. Negative. Look at the decks. Negative, 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 negative. So he's really paired almost exclusively with Mr. Negative at this point. And it'll lead to the same type of win rate, cube rate spread, right? Kind of, if you draw him before you're negative, he just sits in your hand as a brick. If you get him into negative pop-off, you can explode with it and win a lot of cubes. Next up that I saw, Psylocke. We're getting a little further up here, but these are still in, I would put the cellar of the win-loss rates. Psylocke seems like such a key card for these decks that want to cheat out Mr. Negative, that want to cheat out Sarah. But the stats across the spectrum here, they never go positive. They're pretty consistent. Now, I don't have Psylocke. So maybe my perspective of her is skewed as only seeing her when opponents play her. Like I can see how you play her on 2, you cheat out that negative, and you play it on on Gamma Labs or on the Oscorp building, and it just feels so strong you can't even compete. But maybe there's games where you don't draw her early, and then she's just a late game 2-1 that does nothing. It's not helpful on turn 5 or 6. Maybe you draw her on 2, but you don't have a good card to cheat out. So you just, the ability goes to waste, and you have a 2-1 sitting around. I have her actually locked in my shop. I had her as what I feel like the last pool 3 card that I need to really have like these powerful cards. I'm still gonna get her and I'll play with her, but I guess, I'll temper my expectations a bit. I want to talk through one more though, one more. We see the Green Goblin here. The Green Goblin, we know this guy. He's so frustrating, right? He's always been frustrating. He blocks up a spot, he messes up what you're doing, he adds negative power. And yet, look at his cube ratings, minus zero point 0.3. I mean, he's like bad. This is a bad card nowadays. So that made me think, because I know I wanted him real bad. He used to be so frustrating. So let's take a look. Go back to season 6. Season 6 was the last season before Silver Surfer. Now let's go find Green Goblin. Here he is. Look, he used to be a top 30 card back in season 6. What's the difference? The difference is Silver Surfer. I played with my negative Surfer deck, and people would send me a Green Goblin, and if I played Wong in Surfer, he becomes a positive for me. So Surfer kind of negates the Green Goblin effect. And with Silver Surfer being the most played card in the game, Green Goblin just takes a hit. Now, I didn't want to talk about buffs and nerfs. I'm not a card designer. I don't know, but I think we can say that Silver Surfer feels a little overtuned, right? Let's bring it back to season 8. He is the second most played, the second highest win rate among played cards behind it. Hela, who has less than a tenth of the plays. He has the second highest along with Patriot in terms of win percentage. Still, a game seen, he is the fourth highest along with his buddy Brood and of course Cosmo and Scorpion. So when you have somebody who is essentially the most played card in the game and has the highest win rate in the game, it's overtuned, right? We could say that. Maybe it's not like the most frustrating card because you can see when it's coming. But man, it's clearly a power outlier. Okay, so those were, I feel, the most surprisingly underperforming cards based on their reputation in the game. Generally, I think we do have a good grasp on what cards are good and which aren't. So you guys let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you see any other cards on this list that stand out to you. Tell me if you think I'm wrong about Magic. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Keep snapping.